Good afternoon, it's Institutions, it's Tuesday, April 16th. We're gonna spend a little time today talking about the proposed forensic facility. We are here to debate the needs and merits of it, but, in the interest of when we report this out, we need to be knowledgeable about it, and that's what we're seeking today is knowledge. As I do on Tuesdays, I like to just announce the committee, and then we'll start over here.
Yes, Wendy Harrison, represent the Wyndham District.
Brian Collmore, representing the Rutland County District.
Linda Lehman, committee.
And Senator Russ Ingles, Essex District, and thank you, I want to thank everybody, I want to thank everybody that's come today. So as I said in the opening remarks, we're again not here to debate the needs or wants or desires of our forensic facility. We know that probably that is a very big need. We are here just to find out the gist of it because it's going to get a lot of questions on the floor when we report this bill out, and we just need to understand it to answer the basic questions of the bill. So who would like to lead off today as the first witness?
Make
Okay,
it.
Megan,
I'm happy to do that.
Megan, are you good to lead off?
I'd be happy to do that. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you.
For the record, I'm Megan Tierney Ward, and I'm interim commissioner at the Department of Disabilities, Aging and Independent Living. And I'll just start by saying I'm the new kid on the block with regards to the forensic bill, but I'm here to represent both Commissioner Hawes with DMH and Dale because she's at a conference today and couldn't make it. So you know a little bit of the history because the forensic bill has been under debate and consideration for about 2 years. And the most recent intense work happened last summer with a working group that was multi-partied. It included stakeholders, legislators, members from Dale and DMH. And that committee produced a legislative report that provided detailed recommendations on a forensic facility or a forensic program. At the time, the psychiatric care hospital was being contemplated as a potential site for some beds. And I do believe this committee may have even visited that site or at least learned about that. And it wasn't until January or February that the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services told the state that that was not allowable. So that site, that place for a potential forensic program was taken off the table. We are still moving on H192, which is the bill to create policy and process for how we would create a forensic program. So that has not changed.
Can I ask a question? So just because this will be asked, tell us what a forensic facility is.
Sure. We're adapting the wording a little bit from facility to program because of the nature of where it might be located. But a forensic program for this purpose is a place where folks who meet a very specific criteria, and I'll just speak to Dale because I'm really familiar with that process. It's a very similar process, but not the same with DMH. We have a process where a person with intellectual disabilities commits a violent crime and they come in through the court and then are assessed as not being competent to stand trial. They may be designated with an intellectual disability and meet the criteria of what we call Act 248 and be put into the custody of the commissioner at Dale. And the typical process for Act 248 is for the department to then develop a secure wraparound community-based program for people to get their services in the community, but in a secure setting. Because you may know the history of developmental services in Vermont is very community-based oriented. So we provide wraparound services. That's the typical way we do it. But in this case, the biggest difference is that person needs more intense services and they need a secure setting. In some cases, and we were estimating maybe 1 or 2 people at a given time through Dale, some people do not have a setting to go to immediately. So they are away. It can take months sometimes to build that very individualized place for them to live with the right services. And so having a forensic program where that person can stay while that community-based program is being developed will allow them to get stabilizing treatment, therapies, and what they need to get them ready for a discharge. And those are really what's being described in H192 is what are those very specific criteria that would make somebody eligible to be in the forensic program. We're not trying to capture a broad number of people. This is very narrow.
So what could be described as an adult who's having a mental health crisis that's involved in the justice system?
Correct.
Okay.
And we're partnering with the Department of Mental Health because they serve people with major mental illness who have similar situations. And we want to combine that for economy of scale and be able to have a forensic program that can benefit both of our consumers.
Can I follow up on that?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is really helpful because the terms are interesting. This is Wendy Harrison. So I had thought that a temporary facility would be a place where people would leave it because they were not cured, but not having the same disabilities. But what I'm hearing is there are some facilities that we have where people need to be held in a secure location while you build a facility for that particular person. And I know you're not building a separate home or a separate building, you're probably just making a particular place workable for them. But can you explain that a little bit?
Yes, Senator, that's a good question. Under our Developmental Disabilities Services Program, it's typical for people to receive their Medicaid funded services in a home and community-based setting. So that is a home, a house. And that could look like living in the home of another person who's taking someone in to provide care, or it could be one of our designated agencies who has purchased or already owns a space. It's usually a home or an apartment. But with Act 248, it needs to be very sensitive to location. It needs to be, again, a place that can be made secure enough in a place that's secure enough for a public safety component to be considered in their programming. So it's still a home and community-based services setting and service programming, but it's enhanced or more intense for folks in Act 248.
So would this facility have a fence around it and look more like a detainment facility or no?
That's a great question, and I don't have an answer for you. We imagine it would be a therapeutic community residence, so a licensed home. It's possible it could have a fence around it. It probably would not look like a correctional facility, probably look more like a residential care home, which is a little more less institutional, but it will have to have institutional features if we're going to provide care and services to people, depending on their circumstances.
Certainly locked doors, gained access only by ones that are permitted and
Correct.
only allowed to leave under permission.
That's correct. And what the language in this bill allows us to do is to contemplate those variations. Like, what is it that we're going to need based on our current experience with people that we serve? And again, it's both Dale and Department of Mental Health. We may have slightly different needs based on the folks who come in, but we may need a space for treatments. We will need, probably exam rooms, maybe sensory rooms, things like that, that can be really specific to those individuals.
And Kate, this facility would be different from what's being proposed in Middlesex. That's gonna use that Middlesex facility because the Middlesex facility is basically justice involved youth versus adults. Am I correct with that?
Yes, I'm actually gonna defer to Sabrina because she's our AHS.
And I'll just have you identify yourself.
Oh,
I
I'm sorry,
apologize.
Kate Everly, Director of Communications and Legislative Affairs for BGS.
Sabrina Carriage, project manager with BGS. So the temporary Middlesex facility is Department of Children and Families, and that is justice involved youth.
Okay, so same idea, one's youth and one's adult, as far as what a forensic facility would be.
It's temporary, short-term placement for folks who are justice involved in very specific circumstances.
I don't think you can draw a direct parallel necessarily. I would definitely defer to our partners at DCF and
Okay,
the other
yeah.
organization for that.
Yeah, I would think Rebecca Silvernail, I don't think.
So. Or you can ask.
Yeah, just. So what we're gonna do, this is what's gonna happen. I'll tell you what's gonna happen. That's what I said. We're gonna get on this on the floor, we're gonna report this bill. And there's gonna be a lot of questions about what this facility is. And I just need to make sure that the committee is very well able to, whoever reports this section, is able to describe what we're going to do in this section 19 as far as a forensic facility. I know what the language is gonna say, but it's gonna go outside of that. The questions will go outside of what the actual language is. So we will get questions about what is this facility going to do? So I just need to make sure that everybody's clear. Maybe we are. Is everybody clear? We need some more,
I'm
we
not
need some
sure.
more questions.
Yeah, and I'm not sure what. You said section 8.
No, it's 19. It's on this bill. It's not on that one. It's on this bill right here. The section 19 says forensic facility needs reviews reports. The Commissioner of Building and General Services, in consultation with the Commissioner of Mental Health and Disabilities, Aging and Independent Living, shall review the program needs and facility requirements of individuals who will be housed in a proposed forensic facility.
So I think what's important to understand here is that at this point, we're being engaged in planning, so we are working with our partners to understand their needs.
Right.
We are no farther along than that, so we are just at the beginning phases and really cannot speak in any terms to what we're building.
Right. And we're fine with that. We don't need to know what you're building. We just need to know what the program is. And I hate to keep on pounding that point out there. Those are the questions we're gonna be asked. And if we don't know what the program is, it won't be a lot of fun on the floor. We just need to understand what the program is. We're out, Megan's got us off to a good start. I think I mean, if we can describe this program, if this is as easy to describe it, is as a facility that is, again, yet to be determined exactly what all the requirements are gonna be, but it is gonna be proposed to house adults who are in a mental health crisis that might be justice involved. If we can describe it in that way, and if we're accurate enough, then problem solved, as long as the committee is comfortable with that.
Yeah,
Okay.
go ahead.
Yeah, and I think, is it Megan? I think you said,
Yes, Megan, thank you.
you're talking about 1 or 2 people statewide, right? I mean, this isn't gonna be huge. And as I understand it, it would be individually created. So there isn't necessarily a set of parameters that just somebody else has to fit into. You're gonna actually create one for an individual each time that person comes in or out.
I'm glad you asked that question, Senator, because it's actually what you described is the typical Act 248 process where someone comes into Dale's custody, very specific to Dale, it does not have to do with DMH, but just Dale. And we create a home and community-based setting. This is kind of almost like a step down from corrections to a short-term place that they can receive stabilizing services until they get to their customized kind of individualized community-based plan. if that makes sense.
Where are these people where are these people at right now, should this occur? Where are we seeing these folks? Are these the folks that we're seeing?
In
And,
corrections,
okay, in corrections, and they probably, that's just not the proper place for them, because you don't have the right mix of facility for them?
that's correct. The services that are available to folks with the types of needs that they have cannot be met in a corrections setting. And in fact, they decompensate when they're there due to no fault of corrections. It's just the way it is.
And the reason why they didn't, or the reason why it was determined that they couldn't be at Berlin is because they have a little bit more needs as far as on the justice side than just having a mental health crisis.
Senator, do you mean the psychiatric care hospital?
Yes.
It's because they don't meet the hospital criteria for admission.
I think it sounds, so you're saying intellectual disabilities, which is different than a mental health crisis, right?
So
Well, I mean, they are
these
different,
folks usually come in with multiple challenges, right? So they are, by definition, they meet the criteria under the forensic program because they have an intellectual disability. So that's one way they can be eligible under the draft bill as it's written. And the other is they can have a major mental illness. So we're partnering with DMH. The total number of people we estimated previously at about 9. So maybe 2 from Dale, maybe 7-ish from DMH. So a total of maybe 9 people. Most people come into this situation in some kind of crisis or trauma that's happening at the time. Doesn't matter what their diagnosis is really, but something's going on. Even folks with intellectual disability have psychiatric needs as they come in, but then they may also have programming needs specific to their intellectual disability. So we would account for that in their treatment planning.
Are there age requirements? We keep talking about youth and adults. What's an adult versus a youth in this setting?
I believe I'm going to defer to Rebecca in case she knows this answer, but I believe across the board it's 18.
It's usually
But I want to fact check.
Okay.
usually 18.
Rebecca, just tell them who you are in case
Rebecca
somebody.
Silvernagle, I'm the principal assistant at Dale. So, yeah, the age is usually 18, but it could depend.
Okay.
So do we have one of these facilities now?
No.
Or have we ever had one of these facilities?
So
So
these
it's
are,
a new thing.
A new thing for Vermont.
and so this has been the place of some time. I mean, again, we get so many of them. We have probably 3 different programs in this bill in itself. And so these are the folks that could be in the hospital, maybe in the emergency rooms at sometimes, and then maybe there's some things that have gone on there that weren't supposed to happen, or they could be just anywhere. They could be in the jails in themselves, not getting proper programming, or so they're just kind of scattered throughout our society, and this is to give them a safer place to be for both them and for public.
The forensic program is very specific to people who have committed a serious crime. So it only applies to those who have come through the criminal justice system, have committed a serious crime,
Okay,
and
that's helpful.
been found not competent to stand trial and put into the custody of our departments, respective departments, so Dale and then DMH. And when they're in our custody, we are then required to create a certain programming for them. Most people who come into Dale's custody under Dale's program are served in the community under our Act 248 planning. Some cannot be immediately served in the community, and they need the forensic program as a place to land where they can get stabilizing treatment while their community plan is being developed. Otherwise, they would be sitting in jail and decompensating there.
So can we use the term forensic as we have them in there for safety of them and themselves. And the reason why it's forensics is because we're just trying to figure out the best programming for them and how to stabilize them in a way.
And to protect the public. Let's not forget that because it's a public
Right.
safety approach. We want it to be a secure place so that we can assure public safety at the same time that that person's benefiting from treatment.
So we can use that word in forensic a lot, like we're trying to figure it out still.
Yeah.
Okay,
So there's, the need is roughly 9 people throughout the whole state?
Currently,
Yes.
that's what our estimate.
Between mental health and jail.
Between the two.
Okay, so it makes sense to have just one facility with that many people. Is this part of our Medicaid compliance? Because I heard earlier, like Medicaid said it was not possible what we were doing.
So what we wanted to do, the history on that is that we wanted to have it as part of the River Valley, yeah. And CMS, the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid, came in and said, well, they didn't want to put hospital patients with the forensic patients. And forensic really just means justice involved. So they didn't want to see that. They wanted separate entrances, separate courtyards, separate everything. So at this point now we're going, oh gosh, you know, that's not gonna work there. So that's why, that's what.
Okay.
So that, now we've ruled that place out because it's, CMS says no.
Okay.
so there's still a lot to be figured out with this program. We don't know what the building's gonna be. We don't know where the location's gonna be. We don't know, so we are still, this is just authorizing to start to get those questions answered and just start to figure all of that out.
You got it.
Okay. I think I'm a lot clearer. What about you folks?
Yeah,
Good enough?
yeah, I learned a couple new words. Decompensate, that's a very interesting word. And it sounds sad, honestly, so.
So
I think it is.
Decompose.
Yeah, yeah, but no, that's a reason, I mean, if I end up. Explaining this, it would just be, that's the harm that we're trying to address.
Okay.
Right, is that accurate?
Yes, definitely.
Okay,
There's a gap in the system or, you know,
Okay, committee, we're gonna lean on each other as far as we're talking out through and we get ready to report that. We'll talk about this some more.
Yeah.
Make sure we get the right terminology and we all figure out how we're gonna do that. So everybody's good in that right now?
yes.
And, okay. Well, we wanna thank all of you for that. I'm sorry, we didn't want to appear dense. But we just needed to ask the questions in such a way that we could properly explain it when we were asked, and we wanna thank everybody for coming in with that part of it.
Thank you, Senator. I really appreciate you having me and being
Oh.
interested.
Well, we appreciate you very much, so. Okay, committee, we're gonna, let's just pivot on to that. I'm gonna have Scott hand out a few new sheets that are, moving some monies around a little bit. And, we're going to tomorrow, maybe before you go, I'm gonna hand out, just a rough draft of what the bill is starting to look like. I think the reason why I'm hesitant to do that is that I just looked down through there and it confused the heck out of me. And so I just really not trying to put too much on the plate for that, and, thank you. And, so, maybe we can just kind of go down through some of the numbers on here today. And then tomorrow we can get back into the language of things. We have yet to determine, Kate, BGS at some point in time is going to tell us where we can take the $30,000 cash out of and where we can do $30,000 of bonded. As of right now, we have it in our bill, we just haven't identified where we're gonna do it out of you guys yet, so.
Yes.
So that's where it's going to be as far as, that's, I can explain that a little bit further, or Scott can explain that a little bit further, we'll get to the bottom line. Bottom line is that what we are gonna have left, when it's all said and done, so once we determine that, we're gonna have $1,999 left on our bottom line, put someplace.
Did you say 1,000?
$1,999, not 2,000, $1,999.
It sounds
Unless
like
somebody
a-
wants to throw a bucket and we'll round it up.
It sounds like
So,
a sale, but
that's
that's
where
rounding
it's
up
at.
for a dollar.
So we're starting to not get a lot of pressure from across the hall, but we're gonna get some pressure from across the hall, and so that's why we're kind of pushing with these numbers to get us going here. So, Scott, what do you wanna do? You wanna, go around and talk about where we place some of these dollars?
Yeah, so for the record, Scott Moore, Joint Fiscal, based upon testimony we've had here in committee, based upon things we talked about, this is a draft. So anything that we have on here can be changed, of course. So what I did basically was I took the spreadsheet we had previously. And for the purposes of real estate, I shrunk the columns that were Act 69. So you won't see those columns on here. And then just basically moved everything over and added more columns during this green for the Senate institution recommend.
So 69 is what we did last year, okay, guys? So we're just in the realm of things. I'm really kind of trying to make sure that we keep it focused on what we're doing this year. The bill language will have enough of that, to cause enough confusion. So gonna try to keep the conversations on what we're doing this year, not what was passed last year. So to have 69 out of here is kind of helpful. If you guys need any historical knowledge, we can get that real
And
fast.
we can refer back to it if we need to, easy enough. It's still on my Excel sheet. I just hid the columns so you can make more room. I did try leaving it on there, but the font size was too small.
Well, that's another thing too. Scott had said, well, what do you like? And I go, I want to be able to read it.
Yeah.
I want to be able to see it because all of you guys are a lot younger than I am. So
Not me.
Not me.
Thank you for
but
saying
but,
that.
I know that I wouldn't be able to see it. So I don't want to be able to see it. So go ahead,
So
Scott.
with that said, we can start at the top and work our way down. if
Yep.
you don't mind. So what we did, keeping with the same thought process, the governor recommended any changes from the bill were in yellow. The House passed, anything that were changes were in this pink color, and then anything we had done and talked about here in the Senate was in this mint green kind of color.
Everybody understand that format? Okay.
So anytime there was a change, I made the coloring, so like on line 1 here, statewide major maintenance. The governor recommend was 8.5 million. The House recommend was to add money to that they had found along the way. And then what you all had decided was to take that extra money from the House, the 217,818, and lower it back down to the governor recommend of 8.5 million.
Okay, and out of that 8.17 that we went down to 8.5, you're gonna see down at the bottom of here, I don't wanna get ahead of Scott, but I think it's very important to say that we didn't take all that money. In that 8.717 number, the House had $100,000 for the chairs, for the cafeteria that got destroyed during the flooding. And so really, it was only $117,818 that was gonna be available, because you're gonna see, as Scott's gonna show us in just a minute.
Yep.
Where 100,000 of that went.
So we took that money, we moved it down. We're almost there, one line before that, on line 18, the Windsor Southwest, Southeast State Correctional Facility. The House had put in 478,000. 378,000 of that was money they had reallocated from previous bills. They added $100,000 to that. We decided here in the Senate that we were gonna take that money and use it elsewhere, so you'll see that that's now 0.
So if you wanted to do the quick math in your head, guys, the 550,000 that we used to restore the dollars, for the ag, waste, for the water, for the matching dollars. You've got 478, 100,000, so you get 578, so we only have about $28,000 to the good, as if you're doing the math in your head. So we have some more, ads that we're gonna do.
And then here on line 19, you can see what Mr. Chair was talking about in regards to the Montpelier State House cafeteria tables and chairs. This is a new line item, if you will, from the spreadsheet from before. Basically, just give you some, behind the scenes work. There was a blank line 19, and I just stuck this in here, so that way I didn't have to change all the line items across everything.
Oh, that's good.
So basically what we've done here is we've taken out the 217,818, the 478,180, and added in 100,000. As we go through maybe to the end, I'll show you where we are as we're running. Section 3, we had one change here with the South Burlington Justice Involvement Feasibility Study. We talked about the House had added that $200,000, and we talked about taking that away. So you'll see that that is green 0, if you will.
And what you're gonna see on that, because again, Senator Harrison had asked for some language as far as, and I think Senator Renner the same. We're not just taking the $200,000 and forgetting about that. You're gonna see some language that are coming from the bill that's coming over from judiciary. And you're gonna see that they're gonna mandate that, they're gonna look at that facility. And they're gonna do everything that it was asked to do, that this $200,000 was gonna do, probably even then some. They're just not using the $200,000. So, it didn't cost $200,000 to do it. So you're gonna see that in new language on the bill as it comes out. So we accomplished that without using the 200,000, which the 200,000, again, we're gonna use elsewhere.
Great.
Then section 4, there were no changes. Section 5, 6, 7, and 8, there were no changes. We get to section 9, line 69, I believe it is, the dam safety. Yep. The House had removed $100,000 from FY 24. And then we decided here, to put that $100,000 in FY 24 back in. So this, just pay attention to that in FY 24 and FY 23.
So that's where, yeah, just, you know,
Start
again,
here.
yeah, we just didn't have enough money in that anyways. As we heard, as we maybe heard when we did the, I can't remember, Senator Renner, if you were there, when we had the joint meeting up in the other room. We started talking about the Waterbury Dam and all that. We kind of heard some, you know, troubling things about where the conditions are. And as we talked, you know, through even from last year, it always seems like whenever they need to take money, they take it from those programs, but there's a lot of need in a lot of those dams that we just need to make sure that we keep the funding to them so they can identify the problems of these 1,100 dams that are throughout the state.
And have more people, but he does somewhere else.
What's that?
Just the staff.
Right.
Somewhere they're increasing the staff,
Yeah, I think they went to two
Like,
more, whatever.
or like 2 to 4.
Yeah,
maybe.
2, yeah.
I know Senator Harrison, S213 is a lot about dam safety.
Okay,
Yeah.
You know.
thank you.
So,
Okay,
Line 72. This is where we had a little bit of some complexity from before. We had the House of taking money from the cash section, moving it up into the bonding section. That was all one line, and then they had trims along the way to round it to the 1.9. Effectively, it was about $244,000 that the House had trimmed, if you will, from this.
That was maybe 214.
So
well,
now
I think it's 244, but then we're taking a 30,000 out of that to do for the LCI.
okay.
So what this would have done without the 244 back there, it's very likely that they wouldn't have been able to do those conservation camps.
Yep.
That we heard about,
That's right.
and it would have been Buck Lake and Kehoe Park, and so, and Buck Lake, and so we've restored the 244 so they could keep doing those programs moving forward.
And to Senator Oliver's point, we had 214, not 244, so we did take that 30,000, which you'll see in another line item down below. Then the next line item is 74, the Salisbury Fish Hatchery feasibility study. The House had put $100,000 in for that, and this committee decided to take that $100,000 out.
Then we.
like we're doing it.
And we covered that with the language in the bill, to make sure that the money for that Salisbury Fish Hatchery isn't in this bill, it's in the general fund. 550,000, just like what we had originally planned, but that ensures that the Salisbury Fish Hatchery is moving forward between the language in our bill and the 550 in the general fund.
And what's happening with that bill?
It's in here.
Right,
It's,
did we take it to the floor yet, or?
no, it's gonna be in the
Okay.
capital bill in itself.
Okay, so.
So
it's
there,
not-
in the new language, which what I'll do is, I'll, before, when we're all said and done, maybe we can even do it tomorrow. We'll just kind of focus on these numbers here today. And tomorrow we'll, have Damien come back in and we'll go down through the new language in the bill and show you everything as far as where that is.
Great, thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
The next section was section 10, the clean water section, so we're looking at line 81. And the House had removed the $550,000 line item the governor recommended put in. And so the Senate committee here has decided to add that 550 back in, funded by, as we saw before, some of the other money we had taken from the other sections. And then nothing else on this section, so section 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, no change from. We get to section 16, these are the reallocations, there were no changes made there. Section 17, and no changes, and at the very bottom, there's a summary of general obligation funds.
Yep.
We'll see that currently, the difference between the funding and the spending and the bonding is currently $31,999.
Now, that's going to be $30,000 because what we're going to do is, well, I'll let you describe it exactly. I can't remember if we were sitting, I'll let you describe it. Go ahead,
So
Scott.
basically, the mechanics of this, the way it'll work is that 30,000 will end up being moved over to the cash to pay for the LTI. But that'll then leave us the 199 left over to the good that we could put it somewhere else, maybe remain it somewhere, or we could, if there's another person that, we decide, like, and for the 244, we only put 214, maybe we put 215, 999, something like that, so we won't
How
have
about
to do extra.
HVAC for the prisons get it going.
We got $1,999 to put somewhere.
We can
So
spread it
I'm
all
gonna
across all the numbers.
Yeah.
give everybody a dollar,
It's
and
almost-
just make everybody's life hard. But, we should just figure out someplace where it would be
Yeah.
good to go in.
And you can see like this, the same mechanics that the government had, that 640. Column I, line 178, that's 640, this is the same kind of idea of, we're spending less than the funding, basically. So we now still have 31,000 to play with, the 30,000 one that paid over, to pay for the LCI, which is the next section. The very last line, again, I happen to have a blank line, line 207, so I snuck in, a line item for A&R for Fish and Wildlife Lake Champlain International. That's that $30,000 there. So, Chair, I believe you intended to go to A&R directly, not for BGS or anything else, right?
Right,
Do A&R,
yeah,
and then
A&R, yeah.
Go to Fish and Wildlife.
Because they now always have done that before. The only other question that I'll say that I'll ask of the committee is, well, it don't matter because it's the same thing. It can, yeah, it's A&R because we could, we could put it with the, although it would screw up your chart, we could put it with the same, in the same areas where the Southbury Fish Hatchery is. But it don't really matter. I mean, it's, A&R is gonna disperse those funds, so, yes.
Madam Mayor, Mr. Chair, Nick Kramer, Department of Finance and Management. If it's possible, it might be worth checking in with the A&R folks. When appropriations are made to A&R generally, they hit their central office. And then if it did turn out that it needed to go to Fish and Wildlife, they definitely have the capacity to do that. That usually involves writing up a formal MOU, and it's kind of a lengthy administrative process. So if they know ahead of time, oh, this should definitely be a Fish and Wildlife thing, it might save staff a couple
Okay.
hours of drafting up the documents.
Whatever, yeah,
Yep.
however that needs to happen, that's something you will do,
I can reach out to.
Okay.
People and
find out where it
find out where
needs to
what has to go.
I might be able to get an answer.
be. Okay, sounds good.
Appreciate that. So for now, that's those are the numbers real quick. I know I went through that a little bit quickly, but in the interest of time, I didn't wanna take too much time. If you have a question, I'm happy to go through it slower and talk about. Because the line committee conversations we've had the past couple of weeks, we haven't had a lot of time to look at it, but I can, to the best of my recollection, remind you why we decided to do what we did.
Sure.
But
So it's. Reason why I'm doing this in baby steps is to get the numbers straight in our head. I would encourage you guys all to go down through the numbers, even the ones that didn't change. And in this little bit, because we're gonna really kind of ramrod this thing home. I need to make sure that you're kind of secure, even the numbers that didn't change. I mean, it's so, it's not even the numbers that didn't change, it's the numbers that have, I mean, that is what it's about. It's the numbers that didn't change. Just make sure that you're pretty secure in there. I don't know yet how we're gonna report this, but we'll figure out, what everybody's comfortable with. So I would look at the numbers again, all the numbers that are on the sheet, not just the ones that we've changed, to make sure, that you're gonna be very, very comfortable. Some of the ones are, especially some of the ones that are gonna raise some questions, like line 6. Well, how come, and they might not see it, they might not know it, but, well, how come we were $350,000, how come that changed to $50,000? Well, because we decided that somebody decided they had a need for that building. And so whatever we had there for monies before, wasn't needed at this point in time because somebody had a need for that building. And that's the building that is, justice involved youth. That's where that's gonna be, on that Middlesex complex. It may or may not come up, but those are the type of discussions, again, that you will find, again, that you're gonna have questions about, not so much as what we're spending on money, but what we're spending for money, but, what's the facility is being spent on. We get a lot of those interested questions, and so just to know, by all rights, you shouldn't really even have to know about that, but those are the questions you get asked. So you should be able to have an answer for them.
Alright, I got a couple random
Yeah.
stuff. So, the reallocations and transfers, I made a note to myself that these are all negative numbers. So I'm still trying to figure that out. But, or money that's being moved somewhere else. But the 108 Cherokee, there's 3 numbers, so it's 149 to 151, the lines.
Yep.
So, what are those?
So get confused with last year's bill,
I mean,
that's all.
is that what we owe? Is that money that the state owes
No.
for buying that property?
These would be projects that they had started. Along the way, they either canceled the project or they didn't spend all the money that was allocated for the project, or something happened, and so therefore this is. In layman's terms, it's the leftovers.
Okay,
These are projects that started, all of the numbers you see in the column D, where it says BGS, that's like building and ground, building general services, I keep saying building and ground. My
Yeah.
apologies, Commissioner Fitch. BGS, building general services, that would be that project, and then the number next to it is the depth ID, so the department ID includes the year and the specific. Chart of accounts, if you will,
okay,
for that project number.
So if you look at 149, that's in the 2000, I believe. And then 21 and 22.
And then what BGS has done is we've talked to Joy Judd and said, and this happened for those particular ones in FY 24, so it would happen last year. But this year we sat down, all the other ones we see, we talked about and said, here's what you were allocated, here's what you spent, here's what's left over. What can you give back to the capital bill, money you're not gonna use for whatever reason? And Kate can maybe speak more to some of the reasons why we wouldn't use the money. But that's leftovers, if you will, so now it comes back into the capital bill as a funding source.
Fund balance.
So it's fund balance,
Right.
yeah, so.
they are like revenue, so there's another cherry garage too, so
Yeah, there's a lot.
1.7, 6.9, so
Because
that's
they
like
basically decided
$11
that,
million.
yeah, they basically decided, at one point in time, they had moved forward back in, 23, looking at the 24 budget, that this was the type of work, that this amount of work that was gonna have to go into that, along with a lot more money, but they were trying to get ahead of it, so they were just trying to, get dollars built up to get some of this work done. I mean, it was, when all said and done, that building was gonna be proposed of nearly $40 million worth of work before it was all said and done. Whether all that money was appropriated or not, which I don't believe it was, that they were trying to build up funds to tackle that building. But then they made the decision to sell it instead. And so those dollars that they did allocate to build up, to get ready, weren't needed anymore because they had made the decision to sell.
Yeah, so it probably was appropriated, or would it be?
No, it was appropriate, it was, I
Okay.
don't want, I wanna use the right word, it
Yeah,
was,
yeah,
it was certainly bonded for, to get ready to do that type of work.
Just sorry, after you're done.
Go ahead.
I was just to clarify for the record the mechanics of the reallocation section. So technically, as this committee's discussed many times, the capital bill provides authorization for the state to go out to bond. So all of these appropriations that you consider in the capital bill context, those are just allowing the state to move forward with projects. Generally, what happens is we go forward with the projects first, and then we go out to bond to reimburse those costs later. So it's kind of splitting hairs, and I'm almost hesitant to say that, get to this level of granularity, but just for the record, what this reallocation section represents is prior authorized bonding authority that was not used. So in other words, as the chair accurately described, the project went ahead, maybe they didn't cost the full amount originally contemplated, so there was leftover bonding authority, but we did not go out to bond for those dollars. We don't have the dollars sitting in the bank. These reallocations then, when they get reallocated to new projects, constitute just a shift of that authority to bond to new projects.
interesting, okay, so it's like your credit or something almost.
It's like your collective job is to set the limit for what
Yeah.
the state can put on its credit card. And we're saying, in the case of the House Corrections and Institutions Editions, HCI is saying, well, we were authorized to spend $100. We only spent 99 on the credit card, so we'd like to use $1 for something else. And so this is saying, okay, yeah, take that $1 and go use it for this new project, which might.
Right, and that's the majority of that funding of the 14 million.
Well, as you can see, that's FY 24,
Yeah.
Senator Harrison. I'm gonna do my best to stay away from FY 24 when we report this bill out. We already reported that bill last year. That isn't new information. That is what happened last year, and we reported that already. So we wanna really kind of focus on FY 25,
Okay, that's fine,
right?
yeah,
So,
so
does but it is, you know, if you wanna get way into that, you're going to get into an area that you haven't talked much about this year, and you're gonna go humming. And you're gonna,
No.
and you're gonna try to remember what you did last year. This is
Yeah.
already information that has
Yeah.
already been processed, passed, everybody's forgot about it, the only way they're gonna, and we're not doing anything deceitful or deception. It's just, that's the bill, you know, that's what we did last year, so we
No.
wanna stay focused on FY 25.
totally, and I
And the
understand.
reason why I wanted to go through that with you is so that you can understand exactly how we reclaim some of this money. That's why I let that conversation go as deep as where it went. And I
Alright.
want you in your brain, like all of us, like I tell you all the time, I want you to understand it so that
Yeah.
when the questions get asked.
And this has been helpful to me,
Yeah.
thank you. So then I just have one other,
Yeah.
I think, question, which is, we haven't talked that much about the bond premium. The 5.2 million, so that, tell me about that, how did that happen?
Sure, so if I might, Mr. Chair, so.
Yes, please.
The bond premium exists when we go out to bond. I'll give sort of the high level
Yeah.
overview and we can go into more depth maybe offline, but based on market conditions, there may be reasons why investors want to pay more money upfront for state bonds than just the par value of the bonds. So if, say we go out to bond for $100 million. Collectively, all of the investors that are purchasing our bonds may actually pay for, say, $105 million because they get a better rate of return or based on the predicted outcome of the bond market, it's advantageous to them to have that in the portfolio. So what happens in that, that's actually sort of a bad example. Because when we price the bonds, what we do is we factor any premium we anticipate that we'll generate, which we know in advance based on conversations with our advisors and the investors. We factor that into the total issue. So if what we need to raise is $100 million, we may actually only bond for $95 million in par value, knowing that we're gonna generate $5 million in bond premium. But then this gets back to what I was just describing with the reallocations, and that the fact of the capital bill is it is basically a menu of authorizations for the state to go out and bond for X amount of dollars. So if you authorized $100 million in bonding, but to generate $100 million in cash to fund projects, we actually only needed to bond $95 million. There's technically $5 million corresponding to the amount of bond premium in prior authorization for bonding that wasn't used. But because we generated the cash via bond premium to pay for the projects, it's sort of floating out there unallocated. So it shows up on the list of reallocation, well, it shows up in its own section. But it's the same concept, that it's prior issued bonded authority that wasn't necessary to fund the projects, so it's available to reallocate to other projects.
So is it not, what, did we not receive it, the 5.2 million? I thought bond premium, we would have received it.
We do, so we receive the money, the actual cash,
Yeah,
to offset the cost of projects, either that are completed or soon to be completed. That is not what is reflected here. It's sort of a switcheroo, because we received it's basically like bonus money. That's
Yeah.
the technical.
well, no, just because,
At the time of
that-
issuance.
yeah,
So we didn't need to issue any additional debt. We didn't tell anybody for that 5.2 million, the state of Vermont owes you 5.2 million. In the example I gave, we only gave out IOUs for $95 million. But we were planning, this committee in the General Assembly was planning to issue $100 million of IOUs. So in essence, there's $5 million worth of IOUs that we never had to issue because we got an alternative revenue source, this bond premium, to cover those amounts. So that $5 million of unissued IOUs is really what you're seeing here in the spreadsheet represented. We're saying, okay, we didn't need to bond that amount. So that authorization, which the General Assembly gave in a prior session, is floating out there, and we can use it for other projects. We can redirect it and do stuff.
okay. Seems like this is actually cash that we received.
It is bonding
Or
authority
dollars that we
offset by
received.
cash we received.
Okay.
That obviated the need for prior bonding.
For prior bond. So is this from a previous year, the bond premium?
So this.
Oh, yeah, it does say FY 24.
Yeah, so this bond premium corresponds to, we just went out to bond in calendar year 2023, beginning of FY 24 in August. Last August, we went out to bond. So at the time that we did that, when we sized our bonds, we had, I think it was $54 million total was the bond size.
Oh, yeah,
So we only technically issued IOUs, and now I can't remember off the top of my head where, on which side of that the bond premium fell, but we generated. Investors said that they were willing to pay $5.2 million over the par value of the bonds. And so that's what's represented here. So we were able to use that funding, that bond premium,
yeah.
to reimburse all the projects that we were going out to bond for in the first place. And since we didn't need to use the full amount of prior authorized capital bill bond authorization, that frees up $5.2 million to reallocate. This has been the practice, the state's practice for many, many years.
So then is it reasonable to assume a bond premium in FY 25?
Typically, we don't, because they're hard to size, and it also
Right.
depends on the bonding. We have to go out to bond, so it depends a lot on the bond market. We, for instance, we're moving back. I'm in the process right now of working on the preliminary operating statement for a bond that we anticipate going out this summer. But even at this point, we don't know the size of the bond. Depending on what happens with the bond market, we don't know how much premium will be generated. So I think from a financial perspective, the best practice is to retroactively reallocate that freed up bonding authority rather than assuming moving forward, oh, we're gonna have $5 million.
Yeah,
because
no,
you-
I wouldn't want to assume it, but especially because you want to under budget revenues and over budget expenditures. But it's that, I appreciate the explanation because that's 10%, right? Cause that's on the 50,000 or that's on half of the total.
And in
So
prior
that's
years,
pretty nice.
if you look back at Act 69, or I think it's the adjustment, prior year adjustment, Act 180, I think it was in 2022. So that's the last biennium version of what the process that you all are going through right now. I think the bond premium that year was more like $12 million. So actually, bond premium is, other than reallocations, which we just discussed above.
Yeah.
Bond premium is often the most significant source of additional revenue in capital adjustment years. Because the CDAC recommendations for the whole cycle, those are set generally at the beginning of the biennium. Unless there's some big change in their recommendation, there's no additional bonding authority. So in these off years, like we're in right now, the capital bill adjustment years, it's usually only what we can come up with reallocations that are available to play with, and then any bond premium that's.
Yeah.
So
But it's nice that we got the bond premium. So do we usually get a bond premium?
I believe every time we go out to bond, generally we get a bond premium.
Okay.
So I think the amount varies, and again, that's why we don't project it moving forward.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's a.
You don't know until it happens, right?
Exactly.
right, but it probably has to do with our
So that's why-
credit and, yeah.
That's why in next year's, FY 26, we're gonna see a bond, premium adjustment of FY 25.
Correct.
Okay.
Exactly.
Good, thank you.
Clear on that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
More questions? Yes, go ahead.
Sure, we talked about this 100 times, but I just wanted to.
It's okay. We'll talk about 100 you want. Going clear. Going clear.
At the bottom, like the bottom line, should all of these match, like say, where do we end up, like on the line 173, in the total funds available? I want to be capital projects on line 128. Should there be a little more equality among these numbers, like? Should we be aiming to equal what the House passed, or is there a reason those numbers aren't equal? On FY 25, for example? Or whether that's the 2 years, or like, I don't know, maybe you just have to explain to me what the differences are.
Yes and no, I mean,
Okay.
I understand what you're saying, but also keep in mind that with those different reallocations and other things, that there was some more spending ability. So therefore, because there's more spending ability, there's more expenses. So like, if we look at all those reallocations and stuff, or like the 378,000 we found, the repo committee in the House have found an extra $12,000. But that extra money therefore is being used in all the cells above it. Because of that, it's not necessarily going to be to what they got recommended. They may have found some more money, or in the House's case especially, they had moved some of the money from the cash up to the bond. So you
That's
might-
right, there's that.
if I've done my job correctly at the end of the day, everything will equal out, but
Yeah,
we'll
take
have some differences.
Stop.
Wait, why would those equal out?
177,
Between the expenses and the revenue.
Oh, yeah.
you'll see we're spot on.
Right, okay.
Difference being that 30,000.
Got it. Clear? Keep asking until you are.
You was concerned around like column H and K and N are all the same number because those at by 24, nothing's changed.
Good, Senator Renner?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay, yep. Any others? So the two numbers that are gonna change are going to be, because BTS is gonna identify where we can do some bonded dollars versus, where we can take $30,000 of the cash and then replace it with bonded dollars, so you're gonna see somewhere along the way in the BGS item, you're gonna see that, yes,
I mean, to figure out that,
yes,
it's fine to take it out of the planning line item. Or it's fine to replace it in the planning line item.
okay? Everybody understand what that is?
And you're using, see. So you're talking about pulling it out of cash and putting it in.
Yeah, we're gonna pull $30,000 out of cash and we wanna replace it with bonded, so it's almost gonna create another line for you folks in one of your, tax items. Where we're gonna, probably right below, where, right, it's gonna do, I'll let the numbers guys figure out how that's gonna look.
Can you say line 3?
So, yeah, pulling from line 181 and putting it into line 3, right?
What about dry hydrants? We haven't talked about dry hydrants.
It didn't change.
I know, but has that money been used?
I don't know that.
106.
We just never got to that point of where we differed from, where the House differed from the governor's recommend, so.
Yeah.
We never got to the point to where we, were able to ask them in.
Right. It's considered an important program.
And again, Senator Harrison, this would have been, an FY 24, the FY 25 budget would have been presented that way. So in theory, you all would have talked about it last year.
Oh, we did talk about it last year.
Otherwise, we wouldn't have had the FY 24. And then when the bill was first presented for 2 years, you would see FY 24 and FY 25. The last year, you would have seen the 1.5 million.
Oh, we did, but I was just curious if they gave away, if they, used the money in FY 24.
I don't know. I don't remember hearing a testimony in the House committee. I tried to watch every single testimony, but I may have missed one. I don't believe I had anybody in. Maybe I'm wrong. I want.
But couldn't we know from?
Because they were more focused on FY 25 than they were the 24.
Right. I'm just focused on the need for those. So I don't know if towns are applying for them. If they're not, then it's not a big deal. But if they are, then 30,000 could make a difference. Because they save farms. They save farms primarily, rural areas.
Senator, I'm happy to go back and I have notes about every committee.
Right, well, I think we would have to ask them, the administration, and see if the money got spent. That's all.
But just do that, don't complicate it with this bill, just if you wanna do it by yourself,
All right,
that'd be
I'll do it
fine,
by
I don't have a
myself.
problem with that. But let's not complicate the bill with that,
Okay.
okay?
I was trying to find a good use for the 30,000.
We don't have 30,000, we have $1,999.
Yeah, okay.
That's what we have, $1,999,
Alright.
so
Right.
that leads me to the $1,999. We can complicate it or we can make it easy, we can put it, bless you.
Excuse me.
We have $1,999 we gotta put someplace. I'd like not to break up that small amount. We could either give it back to BGS on their major maintenance line where we took that money
Yeah, I
from.
think we should.
That would be the easiest way to do that. Bless
Or
you.
bless you, dry hydrant.
Dry hydrant's over and done with last year. So,
I think
So-
there's no end to maintenance.
so we have to go to maintenance and make that
I
1,000, so we're gonna be 850,000, 100,999. Which the line 1. Okay, that is going to clean our numbers up, guys. Yes,
And Mr. Chair, I just, while we were discussing, got a response from ANR on the fishing derby.
yeah,
Their preference would be that go directly to Fish and Wildlife.
so you wanna just not have, so how would that look? Not in their own,
No, it's fine to have it on its own line. I think all that would need to change is on this spreadsheet, instead of saying ANR Fish and Wildlife. Or
or LCI, no?
I guess as worded, that's okay, just in the bill language itself, make it clear that to the Department of Fish and Wildlife, the appropriation will be made. And that will save them having to create an MOU and send it from the Secretary's office. So it's fine where it is in the bill, it's just a matter of language.
Just the language in the bill in itself, so language change would have to happen.
And Damien might be able to, he's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Can follow up.
I'm sure he's listening.
Yep.
Just
Damien, if you're on, did you hear that?
Sorry, I missed that.
But he was there. He said, sorry, I missed that.
Okay, so all,
Awesome.
so I'm gonna have Nick explain it.
Sure, Damien, hi, so it was just a clarification that there's a cash fund appropriation the committee is adding in the amount of $30,000 for the Lake Champlain Fishing Derby. And the request from A&R, there was just some discussion earlier about whether that should be directed to A&R generally or specifically to the Department of Fish and Wildlife. And A&R's preference be that it go directly to the Department of Fish and Wildlife. So just in that appropriation, in the language in the bill, making sure the language says to the Department of Fish and Wildlife, $30,000 for the Lake Champlain fishing derby.
Okay, all set with that.
Great.
You're clear with that? Thank you, Dan.
So Nick, do we have to change 207 to reflect that, or is that?
I can make that change down the spreadsheet, just, so. that-
FMW instead of in?
You think.
Any other questions, guys? Okay, so our numbers are complete. Tomorrow, what we'll do, we'll go with Damien. Back over some language where the language's been changed. We're gonna count that out. We're gonna count some more on Thursday. And then as long as everybody's good with that, and then we'll, and then if everybody's good, we're gonna try to vote this out on Friday.
Okay.
Everybody good?
Yep.
So far?
Good.
Okay, so. I'm going, unless there's anything else that anybody wants to add, I'm gonna probably call it a day. I've got an appointment I gotta get to and I apologize for that, so I gotta, travel north, but,